Nobody realized they were staring at a trained warrior when 12 gunmen broke into the church. These criminals had no idea that the innocent-looking bride, Emma, used to work in special forces and had spent her whole normal life waiting for someone foolish enough to ruin her wedding. She was about to rescue 180 people in just 4 minutes. This is Emma Claire Richardson. She's 29 with reddish-brown hair falling in beautiful waves. Her bright green eyes kept secrets nobody could guess. This should have been her best day ever. She was getting married to David Mitchell, another veteran who got her like nobody else could. Emma's history was way more complicated than David knew. 6 years back, she worked in one of the Army's top secret units. They called her Phoenix because she could survive anything and come back even tougher. She did 3 missions in Afghanistan and 2 in Syria, working undercover behind enemy territory, running dangerous rescue operations, and staying alive in brutal conditions. Emma was doing amazing in the military when something shocking happened. During a secret mission in a village with regular people, she broke the rules to save innocent lives. Her bosses said she violated orders. Emma said she did the right thing. That day she rescued 15 kids from gunfire but lost her military job because of it. Her commanding officer, Colonel Harrison, told her she couldn't work there anymore and they were kicking her out. Emma walked away from Army life, but the training stayed with her. Her quick reactions, smart planning, and staying cool when things got crazy, it all remained just buried under regular life and now hidden under white silk and lace. Now at Sacred Heart Cathedral in Chicago, she was about to marry the man she loved in front of 180 people. The church looked stunning. Stone arches stretched up high, colorful glass windows threw rainbow colors across the marble floors, and the smell of white roses filled the space. Emma's mom, Patricia Richardson, sat up front crying happy tears. Her dad, Robert Richardson, a retired Chicago detective, watched his daughter with proud eyes. David waited at the altar in his dark blue suit, nervous smile on his face, love shining bright. As Emma walked toward him, everything seemed perfect. The string players performed classical music. Her long train flowed behind her like moonlight, and every step brought her closer to her future. Father Michael O'Connor had started the ceremony, talking about bringing Emma Claire Richardson and David James Mitchell together in marriage. Then the huge wooden doors at the back exploded open with a bang. 12 men walked in wearing black masks, military-style clothes, and carrying assault weapons. The boss was tall and big, holding what Emma quickly recognized as a powerful rifle. His voice sounded weird and robotic through a voice changer. He yelled that nobody should move. This was business. Stay quiet and still and nobody gets hurt. The church went crazy instantly. People screamed, diving behind the wooden benches, some crawling toward exits. Emma's mother passed out. Her father automatically reached for a gun that wasn't there, his police training kicking in. The leader aimed his weapon at Emma's dad, telling the old man to back off. Everyone needed to empty their pockets, take off their jewelry, and give up their valuables. This was a robbery, not a killing, unless they made it one. Emma stood frozen at the altar, but looks were fooling everyone. Her stillness wasn't fear, it was evaluation. Her brain automatically switched into combat mode. Years of special forces training kicked in like automatic reflex. 12 bad guys. Leader carrying a rifle with 30 bullets, finger on the trigger but not ready to shoot. 2 guys by the entrance blocking exits with submachine guns. 3 men walking down the left side with pistols. 2 men moving to the right side of the church, both with shotguns. 4 more spread around, creating overlapping shooting angles. While 180 people panicked around her, Emma's eyes calculated shooting lines, hiding spots, escape routes for civilians, and chances to grab weapons. 5 years of top military training was waking up under her wedding dress. This was trickier than her usual missions. 12 enemies meant they were organized, had a plan, and needed to be taken down one by one. David whispered to stay calm, trying to protect her with his body. Everything would be okay. Emma looked at him. David's face showed fear and the need to shield her. But he didn't understand. Emma wasn't the one needing protection. Emma was the one who protected others. The leader started walking toward the altar, his weapon casually aimed at the crowd. He said it was a beautiful wedding, mocking them. Too bad it had to end early, but they had places to be. Everyone starts emptying pockets now or they'd start making examples. Emma's tactical thinking continued. Leader getting closer, about 12 feet away now. If she moved quick enough, she could reach him before he could aim the weapon properly. But the other 11 were positioned to create deadly gunfire from all directions. This needed more than just fight. It required the kind of smart thinking that had kept her alive through impossible situations overseas. An old man in the third row, probably 70-something, struggled to stand up. The panic confused him and he fumbled with his wallet. The gunman on the left yelled at him to move faster, pointing his pistol at the elderly man. That's when Emma's training took over. Innocent people were in direct danger. The rules were clear. Emma called out, asking them not to hurt him. Her voice carried perfectly in the churches. He was just scared. The leader turned to her, laughing coldly. Well, the pretty bride wanted to talk. He told her if she handed over that expensive ring on her finger, maybe Grandpa would live to see tomorrow. Emma slowly reached for her engagement ring, but her movements were carefully planned. She measured distances, checked sight lines, and most importantly noticed that the second gunman by the entrance had relaxed slightly, more focused on watching the crowd than staying alert. The leader kept talking, stepping closer. That dress probably cost more than most people earn in a year. How about they add it to their collection? Several women gasped in shock. Emma's father started standing up. Emma told her dad firmly to stay down, her voice carrying authority that made everyone pause, including the gunman. But Emma was already moving. In one smooth motion, she grabbed the heavy brass candle holder from the altar and swung it perfectly, hitting the leader's weapon and knocking it up just as her knee slammed into his stomach. The rifle went flying as he bent over and Emma's elbow hit the back of his head, knocking him out cold before he crashed to the marble floor. David shouted, asking what she was doing, but Emma had already grabbed the rifle and was moving with deadly skill. The closest gunman on her left turned toward the altar, his pistol coming up. But Emma's military training worked faster than regular reflexes. Single shot, center target. Enemy down. The chaos that happened next was organized and brutal. Emma moved like a ghost through the church, using the building itself as protection. Stone columns became shields, wooden benches became hiding spots, and the altar area became her command center. Years of urban combat training had prepared her for exactly this situation. She rolled behind the marble altar as automatic gunfire erupted from multiple spots. Pieces of stone and wood flew through the air. But Emma's mind calculated angles and bullet counts. 12 enemies, now 11. Each one had a specific spot, a specific firing angle, and a specific weakness. The two men by the entrance realized what was happening and tried to coordinate their shooting. But Emma was already 3 steps ahead. She used the church's echoes to her advantage, making noise in one direction while moving in another. Her white dress, which should have made her an easy target, somehow helped her blend with the marble and white flowers everywhere. Emma's voice rang across the church with total authority, telling them to drop their weapons. But she wasn't waiting for them to listen. She was systematically taking out threats while keeping civilian deaths at 0. The men hiding in the benches tried using guests as shields. But Emma's perfect shooting skills let her neutralize threats without endangering innocent people. Every shot was calculated, professional, and devastatingly effective. One gunman near the side of the church made the mistake of underestimating her because of the wedding dress. He stepped out of hiding, confident that a bride couldn't possibly be the danger his team. Emma's response was fast and final. The remaining bad guys began realizing they weren't facing a panicked civilian. They were facing a professional soldier who knew exactly what she was doing. Their teamwork fell apart as fear replaced confidence. Emma's voice had completely changed. This wasn't the soft-spoken bride from moments ago. This was Sergeant Emma Richardson, Special Forces, giving orders that carried absolute authority. The last 3 gunmen near the back of the church had watched the systematic takedown of their whole team. They found themselves facing a bride who moved like a storm, who seemed to predict their every move, who fought with the kind of precision that could only come from years of the most elite military training available. They dropped their weapons and put their hands up. One shouted that they surrendered and asked her not to shoot. Emma kept her weapon aimed at them while scanning for any other threats. She ordered them face down on the floor, hands behind their heads. All of them. Now total time, 4 minutes and 12 seconds. 12 armed men taken down, 180 civilians safe. The church fell into stunned silence. Everyone stared at Emma in complete shock. She stood there in her perfect white dress, holding an assault rifle like a professional, her hair still perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. Emma turned on the weapon's safety and put it down carefully. She took a deep breath and turned to face everyone, asking if everyone was all right in her gentle, caring voice. Her father, Detective Robert Richardson, stood up slowly, his face showing professional recognition of what he'd just seen. He started to ask how she did that, and Emma smiled softly, saying it was a long story. But maybe they should finish the wedding first. David still stood at the altar, staring at his bride in total shock, stuttering questions. Emma walked back toward him, saying she was still herself. She just had to face her past a little sooner than expected. Father O'Connor, still shaking slightly, picked up his microphone asking if they should call the police. Emma replied calmly that they were already coming. The church security system automatically alerted them when the doors were broken. Sure enough, sirens could already be heard getting closer. Emma took David's hands in hers, telling him she knew this was shocking. She had things to tell him, things she should have shared before. David's expression slowly shifted from shock to understanding, realizing she was military, really military. Emma confirmed, Special Forces, 5 years. She wanted to tell him, but David finished her thought, understanding she wanted to protect him. Emma nodded. Her past was complicated. She might have enemies. She didn't want to put him in danger. David looked around the church at the neutralized threats. At the 180 people alive because of his bride's actions, at the woman he thought he knew completely but was only now truly meeting. He asked softly who she really was. Emma felt more exposed in that moment than she had facing armed gunmen. She told him she was someone who loved him more than anything, but also someone who made a promise to protect innocent people, and that promise doesn't end when you leave the military. The sirens were very close now. Father O'Connor cleared his throat and suggested that given the unusual circumstances, perhaps they should complete the ceremony before the police arrived. A voice from the crowd called out to finish the wedding. It was Emma's mother, Patricia, who had woken up and was now standing with tears of pride in her eyes, calling out that Emma was her daughter, her brave, beautiful daughter. The entire church exploded in applause. Emma felt her face burn with embarrassment. She'd spent her whole military career working in secret. Now she was exposed in front of 180 people. David stepped closer, asking Emma Richardson if she would marry him, all of her, the bride, the soldier, the protector, the woman he loved. Emma felt tears forming in her eyes for the first time that day, telling David Mitchell yes, as long as he understood this came with some unique challenges. David laughed, saying she just saved their entire wedding. He thought he could handle a few challenges. Father O'Connor raised his voice over the approaching sirens, announcing that by the power given to him, and under these most extraordinary circumstances, he pronounced them husband and wife. David could kiss his bride. As they kissed, the church erupted in cheers and applause. The doors opened and Chicago police tactical officers began flooding in, but they found a wedding celebration instead of a hostage situation. Detective Lieutenant Sarah Chen, leading the response team, looked at the scene with professional amazement. 12 neutralized gunmen, 3 surrendered suspects secured, and 180 unharmed civilians. She asked who neutralized the threats, though the answer seemed impossible. Detective Richardson approached with obvious pride and disbelief, saying that would be the bride. Lieutenant Chen looked at Emma, who was now taking wedding photos with David. She told Emma she needed to ask some questions. Emma replied, of course, but could they have just a few minutes for family photos first? Lieutenant Chen studied the scene, 4 neutralized gunmen, 180 unharmed civilians, and a bride who looked like she'd just stepped out of a fairy tale rather than a fight. She asked about Emma's background. Emma smiled, introducing herself as Miss Mitchell now and explaining she served 5 years in special operations. Chen asked about her call sign. Emma hesitated briefly before answering Phoenix. Lieutenant Chen's expression changed dramatically, asking if she was the Phoenix from Operation Desert Storm. Emma nodded reluctantly. Chen caught herself mid-curse, telling Emma she was a legend. They taught her tactics at the academy. Emma blushed deeply, saying she was just a newly married woman now. David added, putting his arm around her, and an amazing wife. The reception that evening was unlike any wedding party in Chicago history. Guests couldn't stop talking about what they'd witnessed, and several news crews gathered outside the hotel, but Emma only wanted to dance with her husband. She asked if he had any regrets as they swayed to their first dance. David grinned, asking about marrying a woman who could probably take down half a football team single-handed. Not a chance. Emma mentioned she wasn't exactly the normal, quiet wife he thought he was getting. David stopped dancing and looked into her eyes, saying she saved 180 lives today. She protected everyone he cared about. She was brave, skilled, compassionate, and deadly when necessary. Normal was overrated. That night, as Emma hung up her wedding dress, she looked at herself in the mirror. For 6 years, she'd hidden who she really was. Today, she hadn't chosen to reveal herself. Circumstances forced her hand, but maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. She was still the woman who loved David with all her heart. She was still the daughter who wanted to make her parents proud, but she was also Phoenix, protector, warrior, guardian, and maybe, just maybe, she could be all of those things at once. The next morning, Emma and David read the newspapers together before leaving for their honeymoon. The headline read that a bride single-handedly stopped an armed robbery and saved 180 wedding guests. The smaller headline said former Special Forces soldier Emma Mitchell neutralized 4 armed men during her own wedding ceremony. Emma folded the newspaper and looked at David, saying there was no hiding anymore. David kissed her forehead, saying good, he married the real her. Later that morning, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon in Hawaii, Emma received an unexpected visitor. A man in a military uniform stood at their door, introducing himself as Colonel James Harrison. Emma stiffened slightly. This was her former commanding officer, the man who had kicked her out. He said he came to apologize and to tell her that what she did 6 years ago, protecting those children, it was the right call. Command had since acknowledged they were wrong to let her go. Emma felt a weight she'd carried for years begin to lift, thanking him for saying that. Colonel Harrison continued, explaining the Army would like to offer her a consulting position, training the next generation of Special Forces soldiers, part-time civilian contract, her own. Emma looked at David, who nodded encouragingly. She said she'd consider it. The colonel said that was all they could ask, and thanked her for her service, all of it, including yesterday. As they drove toward the airport, Emma thought about how much her life had changed in just 24 hours. She'd started the day as Emma Richardson, former soldier trying to live a quiet, normal life. She was ending it as Emma Mitchell, wife, protector, and someone who no longer had to hide who she really was. David asked what she was thinking as they sat in the airport terminal. Emma said she was just thinking about how sometimes life forces us to be who we really are, whether we're ready or not. David asked who she really was. Mrs. Mitchell. Emma smiled, looking at her wedding ring next to the simple band David had placed there just yesterday. She was someone who believed in protecting the people she loved, someone who thought actions mattered more than words, someone who'd learned that strength and love weren't opposites. They were partners. David said that was perfect. That was exactly who he fell in love with. As their plane lifted off toward Hawaii, Emma looked down at Chicago growing smaller below them. Somewhere down there, 180 people were going about their lives because she'd been willing to be who she really was, when it mattered most. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives happen when we stop hiding and start accepting everything we are. Emma's moment had come wearing a white silk dress, holding a rifle, surrounded by the people she loved most. And in that moment, she'd learned the most important lesson of all. Being strong enough to protect others and being open enough to love deeply aren't opposites. They're the same courage shown in different ways. The bride who saved 180 lives became the wife who understood that real strength comes not from hiding who you are, but from having the courage to be everything you are, all at once. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.